name is Eileen Donovan Agnew, and for today, for Speech 201, I'm going to do my speech, my informative speech, with a visual aid on voter fraud. This is something that we've seen all over the city lately. It's a billboard, of course, because of our upcoming election. Voter fraud is a felony. It might have caused a little bit of controversy, but today I'm here to explain to you that it is a fact. Voter fraud is a felony, and voters should be aware of the different kind of voter fraud, how it comes about, and different ways that you know so you can prevent it from happening to you, so you're not a victim of voter fraud, or you don't actually commit voter fraud yourself. First off, what is voter fraud? According to Stealing Elections, How Voter Fraud Threatens Our Democracy by John Front, voter fraud, or some would like to call electoral fraud, is the effective votes counts to bring about an election result, whether it is in a negative way where it kind of increases the vote of a favored candidate, or by decreasing the vote of a rival candidate. It is very important to know that, once we know what voter fraud is, how can we pinpoint it, and what are the different ways that voter fraud can be committed? One such way is done pre-election and done nationally is gerrymandering. And that is drawing electoral boundaries, since in national elections it's by electoral college. That is when you put a particular group in a smaller electorate where they have a smaller amount of electorate votes, in which you might have one group where an election or an official might actually gain the most votes, but if you have this particular group that's voting for the certain candidate, they're not going to win the election, because then you put the other candidate in a larger, where they have a larger electorate vote where they win that part, and they might actually win the actual results. Another such way that voter fraud is committed is by intimidation. This is when there's a certain amount of pressure put on a group or on a voter themselves, so they vote in a particular way. This is seen more likely when in absentee votes or by remote voting, because you don't have the protection that you have by the actual polling places. You're not in a private, secluded area. So anyone can persuade you to vote in any way that they want you to. Another way is vote buying. Voters give another person money or something of value, so you vote in the way that they want you to. Another way would be misinformation. That's giving voters the wrong information so that the time and place to vote, so they're not even there when they want to come and vote. Another way, which was seen actually in the 2000 election, was misleading ballots. This was seen by the butterfly ballots, which was explained in Florida elections, how people didn't know what they were voting for. They thought they were voting for one candidate when really in actuality they were voting for another one. For here, I'd like to show an example of what in the state of Wisconsin, this is what our ballots actually look like, and which would be passed around for everyone to view themselves. It's a pretty simple ballot, pretty simple way, so everyone knows how to vote and knows where to place their marks. Another way, which is actually seen more often, is ballot stuffing, which occurs when a person casts more than one vote. It can also be done if a person pretends to be someone else and goes in and votes. They use another person's identity. Another way would be if a person votes when they're not even supposed to. As an example, people that have committed felonies, they're not eligible to vote, and they still go out and vote anyways. Or by using a dead person's name and votes under that name. It is important to know that now that we know what voter fraud is, how can we prevent it? According to the website for Wisconsin government, the 2003 Wisconsin Act 265 directed people to look at the polls and to see how election laws were being complied with. The Government Accountability Board visited polling places in November 2006 and reviewed the election board's efforts to, number one, ensure that electors are allowing people to vote and making sure that people that aren't eligible aren't voting. Number two, they made sure that the polling places were accessible to people with disabilities, or they also addressed election-related concerns and complaints for citizens. Those are all ways that you have the election board, they have to maintain and look around what's going on to make sure that voter fraud is not being committed. Another thing with voter fraud, the media often highlights voter fraud. It's controversy. Everyone wants to hear about it, even if it's not a big thing. Wisconsin was looked at, especially in the 2004 election, as being a place place where voter fraud actually is committed. There are many claims, hundreds of claims. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, though, out of all those claims, only 7 were actually substantiated as voter fraud. Those allegations weren't, actually true. Only 7. Among those allegations, it was the 7 of them were actually people that knowingly cast these votes. They were convicted of felonies, and that's why they weren't able to vote. Among that was the amount of rate of 0.025% of all the votes within Milwaukee, and 0.002% within the whole state. Of course, any vote that is committed with voter fraud is horrible. It affects our idea of democracy. But it's not truly the biggest problem as the media likes to perceive. So now that everyone knows all the facts, we can be ensured that voter fraud, yes, is a felony. Now we know, so we don't commit it ourselves, we don't become victims of it, and enjoy using, as an American citizen, your right to vote, and enjoy voting in the next election next week. Thank you.